Welcome to Marvel Champions Podcast, a Marvel Champions card game podcast. I'm your host, Scott, and with me is Ryan.
All right, let's do this.
All right, so today's episode is going to be a little different. We're going to be doing a rules corner.
Rules corner.
Oh, yeah. So we're just going to take a recent rule that I saw on the community Facebook group and kind of get your opinion and thoughts, Ryan, and see if we can untangle some of these rule conundrums we're facing.
Now, I have not seen this rule question yet, so this will be, you get fresh perspective on this one.
Yeah, so this is one I found. I'll spare my thoughts until we talk about it, but I thought it was really interesting. All right, so I think this person's name is 311, to give him credit, but he says, I have a couple Marvel Champions questions. One, if my hero, Adam Warlock, is stunned or confused, I can still play Karmic Blast or Cosmic Awareness and deal damage or remove threat, because that's part of the cost, and only its effects would be replaced by the status card. Right? So that's the question.
Okay, so I need to go find myself some Adam Warlock real quick while you finish up.
So I've got Adam Warlock right here. So
we'll
first
already got it pulled up.
take a look at Karmic Blast. So this is where I think where the confusion come from. So typically with a status card, the status card reads that the next time you would attack for a stun, you remove the card instead. And when you play an event that's an attack, typically you pay the cost of the card. In most cases, whatever the top left corner is, you pay that cost. The card does nothing, it all fizzles, and then you go and you actually remove your status, right?
I'm following.
Okay. But with Karmic Blast, and this is where I think he gets confused. Well, this is where the confusion comes in. Is we always talk about that little arrow on the card, and anything before it is all costs. Anything after it is the action, right?
That's what I've heard.
Okay, so it says hero action. Deal 4 damage to an enemy and discard up to 4 cards from the top of your deck. And then it has the arrow. Then it says deal 1 additional damage to that enemy for each different aspect discarded this way.
So in theory, the cost is dealing 4 damage and discarding cards. So the attack, according to this question, is deal 1 addition damage to the enemy for each different aspect, right?
Right. By their ruling, it's deal 4 to the enemy, and then you choose to discard up to 4. That's the cost. That's not what the card does.
That I mean.
Okay,
I guess. Okay.
So let's jump back to what the ruling from the FFG person was. It was yes, given that dealing damage is part of the cost to play Karmic Blast, you would still deal 4 damage even if you were removing stunned with the card. And then the same idea for Cosmic Awareness for a confused status card. You'd still remove the threat even if you were removing confused. And Cosmic Awareness is pretty much the threat equivalent. You remove 3 and then can discard and do additional.
Up to 4, okay.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on this card? On this ruling of cost before the arrow, and there was one other example which I can share with you in a second.
I mean, if to get rid of stun, you have to begin the action, like pay the costs to do it. So, like for a hero doing a basic attack to get rid of a stun, you have to exhaust, right?
Right.
That's the payment.
Right. You exhaust and then do whatever the number is, or
Yeah. So then, if that's the case, then that card would make sense. The cost is you're dealing damage, and you can choose to discard more cards to potentially do more damage, but because you're stunned, you wouldn't be able to do that. So you wouldn't discard, basically. You just deal 4 damage with that card.
Yeah, but you could choose to discard because that's still part of the cost. You just
Yes,
won't
but
get any
you don't
benefit
get
from
the
it.
yes, you don't
Correct.
get the benefits. So there's really no reason to discard unless you're trying to thin your deck out.
All right. So here's the next example. It was from the Wolverine pack. It's one of his signature cards. It's the Berserker Barrage. This
Mm-hmm.
says hero action attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. If this attack defeats an enemy, you may take 2 damage. Arrow, repeat this ability.
So here's an interesting one
Because this one
because
has like a period.
because I feel like the action is actually dealing 4 damage to the enemy,
See,
but there's an additional action slash cost. That's the way
see,
it kind of reads to me.
I understand the arrow and the cost concept, but in my opinion, I think that they don't have a good symbol or like transitional thing to say, hey, you can also do this thing. And they just shove the arrow in right here, thinking we'll just use the arrow to say, if you did all this and it does defeat an enemy, you can do it again. But it's not really, in my opinion, that's not the cost. The card is dealing the damage. Like, that's the benefit in what the card does is deal 4 damage.
Yeah, I think for this one, the actual action is dealing the 4 damage to the enemy.
But in my
Um,
opinion, those Adam Warlock ones are like identical.
pull up here. I can pull up Adam Warlock.
I can get it here pretty quick.
Because I think they read differently, and that's where it kind of comes into play.
But like it doesn't because they both start with that big deal X damage.
Okay, well, I've got it pulled up again. So it says, but there's no period. I think that's kind of like
Correct, there
the
is no period. But
and there's
you
an
could just simply
and.
replace the and with the period. Deal 4 damage to an enemy, period. Discard up to 4 cards from the top of your deck. Arrow, deal 1 additional.
I think it's the phrasing that is the most difference. So this one, you're right. It could say deal 4 damage to an enemy. Period. If you choose to you may discard up to 4 cards
Yes.
from the top of your deck. And if you do, arrow, deal 1 additional damage. If that was the case, it was written, I would say it would the stun is the dealing the 4 damage to the enemy.
Yeah, but see where I struggle a little bit more with the Adam Warlock ones is like you don't have to discard. It's not part of the cost to play the card.
Correct.
You don't have to discard.
Correct.
You can just play 2 and deal 4.
Yeah. So for Karmic Blast, the cost is dealing. You have to deal 4 damage. So here's another question I'm going to throw in here: is if you can't deal 4 damage to an enemy, can you play this card? Meaning you actually have to deal 4 damage, so it wouldn't work against a minion with 3 health.
No, but that would be excessive damage because you can always send the packet of damage more than what is left.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you're dealing the 4 as like a packet of damage.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes with the other ruling of was like She-Hulk, where it says deal 1 damage to yourself, but you don't. Net with the new ruling, you don't actually have to take the 1 damage
Right.
unless it said
the
the
difference
word.
between deal and take, right?
Yeah, so if there was another word instead of deal 4 damage to an enemy, if it said an enemy has to take 4 damage, I guess.
Yeah. So that was my little conundrum that I mean, personally I feel that it's just a bad use of the arrow because there is no other symbol to like say you can also do this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be confusing. obviously it is because we're having this. That person had the question, and we're having this conversation.
Right.
But I see what it's trying to do, and I think if I had to guess, for a person that's not a designer of this game and not one of the people that did design this game, I would say they kind of maybe they did think like, hey, let's do this as a cost. Maybe they thought that was cool, or maybe they meant to just do the discard as a cost. But either way, I mean, it brings confusion like this.
Yeah, and technically, by the official ruling, you can deal 4 damage even when you're stunned from an attack card.
Yeah, I would definitely say for Karmic Blast, if that's the way they want to do it, fine, that makes sense. If you translate that to Wolverine, I think his um, I think his deal 4 damage is the actual action. And I will say it's because it says if this attack defeats an enemy, there's a condition that has to be met before you can pay that cost.
So I think I noticed this when Wolverine came out. Like, I think the period is the big takeaway for this one because it's like deal 4 damage to an enemy, period. So you can do that. And then
Yes.
the cost of the repeat this ability is the taking of the 2 damage. It isn't the dealing of the 4 to an enemy, it's the taking the 2 damage.
Yes.
Is what the cost is to repeat it.
Yes.
It's
So,
almost
yeah.
like they needed to put it on a different line.
Yeah, spacing probably would have helped.
And I
Kinda
know
like-
spacing's a premium on these cards.
Yes, but I think it helps with like Black Widow. Black Widow has the spacing for her card, her attack one,
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one.
to help differentiate. But yeah, it goes the action, then a condition of a cost, and then what the cost gives you.
Yeah,
lose
I
you
don't
on
know.
that one.
I don't know about this one. So, I mean, me personally, if I were to play these, I would pay the 2 cost and negate the stun and not play the card at all. That's how I would play it. I would do the spirit of the law.
Yeah, for me, I would do Karmic Blast the way they ruled it.
Of course
Because
you would.
that's what they did. I mean, they ruled it, but for Berserker Barrage for Wolverine, the stun would cancel the card essentially.
Yeah. All right.
That's my official ruling. And if you play it any other way, you're a loser.
I think I heard a gavel right there. Is that your official ruling, Judge Judy?
That's with my credentials as a judge.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out with us this Rules Corner little episode, and we appreciate you stopping by. And remember, if you want to go from a chump to a champion, listen to the Marvel Champions podcast.